As a project manager, my philosophy is always I'm looking down the train tracks to see if the train's coming, and this feels like the train's getting pretty close, and we're about to get hit by it, and we're not going to be able to get out of the way, and there's no way to untie the rope tying us on the tracks because no one's thinking about it.
It is hard to get out of the way without legs on.
I was trying to find a way to make that joke too. Without legs, you can't get out of the way.
All right, welcome to the next Simpraxis, where you ask Simpraxis all about Microsoft Ignite. We've got a whole bunch of stuff that's planned, but we would love a ton of unplanned things in the chat. Come off mute, share your favorite thing that you heard, or your most depressing thing that came out of the week or didn't come out of the week. But we want to definitely share our takes. We've got a full team here that's going to walk through some of the highlights, some of the lowlights, some of the takes, and have plenty of room for you to get caught up on all things Ignite. I didn't attend locally. I don't know if anybody on the team was there locally, but if you were there in person, also drop if you've got a photo or two of something that really excited you. That would be fun to see in the chat too. So we are Simpraxis Consulting. If you've been here before in Simpraxis, you know how it goes. We want you to ask us questions, but you're also going to be getting a presentation about a topic, the topic being Ignite and all the news that was released last week. But we've got a full team, a full crew. I think you know who we are, so we're going to just jump right into it. Again, this is the Ignite recap. So I've seen probably about 20 other episodes and podcasts that are doing their own takes, which is wonderful to see it from all different angles, different roles, and IT and dev. But it was a big show. There was about 20,000 people in person, 200,000 people online, and just a ton of sessions, all of which are now released and available for on demand, so you should know that. They're in the resources, a lot of links so that it can get you to where you need to go. But we're going to rock through the big rocks, the hot takes, what we didn't hear, some of those things that we had hoped to hear, Q&A and your thoughts, and then, of course, those resources. And if you squint and stare, these are just some screenshots or highlights that I found or the team found that happened live or from different presentations. You can see in the round with Judson, who is sort of the new Satya MC of Ignite. You got Work IQ, which I have one question about for everybody, and then just a fun thing that happened in the expo hall with Legos. So the big question to everybody, are you ready for the big rocks? Shall we rock it?
Rocking on.
Yes,
right.
We should.
Rock on, Mark.
Rocking on. And this is meant to be interactive, so there might be some things that I've got planned to ask a few things. But the first thing is, was anybody surprised about Work IQ? And do you know what it is? I feel like I do, and then I question myself when I ask about it. It is the intelligence layer of Copilot. That's how it's being positioned. But my sense, and this is not a negative, is it's just a rebrand of part of the Microsoft graph, the end user value of knowing who you work with, what you work on, and being able to then show you relevant things. But they made a big deal about the Work IQ layer, which I think is valuable to be able to have something to be able to tell people who don't quite know what the graph is or that maybe wasn't working for them. But I'll pause there. It's a big question for me. Is that resonating in terms of having the new brand, and is it what it is? It's not necessarily entirely new.
So I think Dan Toff mentioned it in the chat there. I think of Work IQ as the graph, like you mentioned, plus all of the context of Copilot. So all of the things that you've talked to Copilot about. So it's kind of the marriage of those two things. That's how I see Work IQ.
It's a wrapper.
Gotcha.
All
wrapper.
the IQs are Copilot wrappers around things we already knew.
Well, they actually qualify for the prettiest slide of Ignite in my mind. It's one of the small ones at the very front that we showed. The Work IQ slide I know will be pilfered and stolen and abused and used many times over. So if anything gets people clarity on what it is and what it does, I think that's a net good thing. Ami, you raised your hand for 2 seconds.
Yeah, I understood that they were comparing to the ChatGPT, and yet in the Copilot, it understands the context of the work. So it's not only checking, it's also understanding and memorizing and taking all of the information that you have in your workplace. So that's what I feel is it gives, but I'm not sure exactly how it is, but it might be the graph. But understanding the context of work and how you work, and it learns how you work, is what I think is the special. My guess.
I think your guess is good, and I think that if the big valuable thing is it's getting its tendrils into more of what it's supposed to do, hopefully then the result set and the value of Copilot in the future is improving. All right, so moving through these, this is not meant to drill into all of them. We've got a couple of segments where Todd's going to go a little bit deeper into Agent 365. So pause on that, but that was a big announcement. It was in a couple of sessions. But first, I think prominently announced by Charles Lamanna, if that gives you a sense of its kind of Power Platform-y++. Agent mode is coming within Word, Excel, PowerPoint. Not too much of a surprise, but hopefully nice if you're not an expert in one of those. It'll help you navigate through and get things done. Copilot Studio, the big thing, adding new models. I think hopefully, getting some of the goodness that's coming from Google as well, but to have choice of your models and how you build and the value of what it returns. A little out of my comfort zone on that one, but I think it's a good thing to see the new models coming in and getting not just with OpenAI, but beyond. The next one I thought was really important for small businesses. And if you have a comment about Copilot Studio, Ami, go for it.
No, my comment for the agent mode is that it uses the Claude. Claude is currently still out of the zone of the Microsoft 365. So organizations that want to use it need to take the risk of using the Claude or the Anthropic, which is not currently still So that's a risk. So they're announcing something, but yet they're not saying what is the risk and what is the. Most organizations, I guess, will not do that and will not activate it also in a researcher, which needs that. So it's an important thing to raise because,
Yeah, I think that is a big takeaway from all of these extension points where they're going into Claude, they're going to other models like Anthropic, is that those are crossing outside of your M365 tenant. So your data is leaving your tenant. So when we have conversations and somebody stands up on a stage and says, your data is your data and we don't do anything with it, we don't train our models with it, that speaks only for the Microsoft controlled models, not these other models. And so
was it
interesting?
Did anyone notice, is there any kind of sort of in-app in Copilot Studio language that helps people understand that? Just because your cousin says Claude is cooler, you might switch to it, but then not realize, right?
It's a setting in Admin Center where you allow third-party things. So no end user cannot do that. It's a decision of the admin to activate it. So it's on a technical level and not the end user.
Right, but the admin is making the decision about whether or not that's available, whereas the person creating the agents is the one determining what data gets pushed outside of that boundary. So there's a mismatch there.
Interesting. All right. Well, let's take the
risk. Don't want to dive too deep.
I think we should take the risk and move on. But at the same time, it'd be interesting if at some point they do take it and bring it into the tenant scope, so that it's not a risk. I bet that they will hear that loud and clear.
And Francis actually says he thinks that Claude is installed in an Azure sandbox, so that might alleviate the concern.
Yep.
Important to know, though.
Yeah, very. So this was just good for small businesses. If you meet the criteria, you can get a little bit less than $30 per user per month with the Copilot business plan. I think that's an important step for people if they want Copilot or want the integration of Copilot within their content, that'll make it a little bit more tenable. This one felt like a kind of a reboot of robotics. What does RPA stand for? Robotics Process Automation. Robotic process automation. That's what this one felt like, which was kind of a fun demo to see a VM just sort of following some tasks and doing things on your behalf. Fun one to do. These next few, I'm going to jump ahead to a different slide because they're really encapsulated into one session that Adam Harmitz and John Mile put on. which is one definitely, if you know Sympraxis, you know we go pretty deep on SharePoint, so let us do that. But just as a summary, we're going to start getting a little bit more into the SharePoint weeds. So this was the presentation. It's kind of a fun note, but if you see Adam here, during his presentation, he actually took a picture of the roadmap when he was showing it, which I thought was kind of fun. I don't know why he did it, but it was fun to see him snap a shot of like the rest of the audience was probably doing. But they made a whole bunch of announcements, of course, around Knowledge Agent coming to GA, getting a little bit more fluid. The ability for doing things in chat with lists and pages. Actually, we now can do the create pages within the Copilot chat. I tried that once and it seemed to work as it was. I had hoped for a few more little buttons and some friendlier UI, but that seemed to work. There's some new Copilot goodness coming to SharePoint. But this statement down here, beyond some of the announcements you can read on your own, was just one of those things that's nice to hear. About 50% of what the team that falls under Adam, which is a lot of the user experience development and the design of new features, 50% is still focused on core SharePoint, which I think is a big relief to our team, to the customers that we work with that aren't moving to Copilot or haven't even thought about it just yet. It does mean 50% of their time is not on core. So take that for what it is. But I thought it was a great statement for him to make. I think it's important, obviously, to hear, and of course, you know, throughout the year to really focus on things that you can maybe channel to Adam and team when it's important. That is core and hopefully where that focus will be. But good progress as always through the year, and a lot of good, exciting things to come. And this was just a slice at the UX level. There was a whole other talk on admin, and there's a lot, of course, talk around the broader scope of Copilot and some of the ways that SharePoint is surfaced in other places. I'll just center here, and then I'm going to hand off to a few of the team. This was one that I thought was pretty cool. It's the new UX for building a workflow within SharePoint and Teams. So in document libraries and in channels. And it is a step through, like you'd imagine. It used to be called in Power Automate when it was whatever it was before. They used to be called recipes. So it's kind of back to that model where you can click into a recipe, it says what it does, and then you can kind of fill in like a Mad Lib. You know, what's the noun, what's the verb, and let it go, do its thing. And as you would expect, you all are probably way more fluent than I in this, is you can take the flow and you can truly then take it into Power Automate Designer and to your heart's content. But it's really intended to make the flows real versus some of the real simple notification styles, and really get it to do real things. And it's also nice just to see that it's consistent across SharePoint and Teams out of the gate. So I think that'll be a fun one to see. Any thoughts or opinions on that before we move to some of the team's hot takes? Silence is we keep the flow going.
I like the you know, being able to create it in sort of in product, if you will, and then upsize it to maybe a more powerful interface. So if you're doing something simple, no big deal.
Yeah.
Then you can edit it.
Agree. But the nice thing to do is it answers itself really quickly too, is it is really Power Automate under the covers, full stop. It's not a, is it a new tool or a new thing that goes off and does? But Derek, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and I think Karen just posted a comment in the chat. This is, again, democratizing the creation of the workflows, which means that you could create a workflow that becomes a business process. And this is sort of and IT has no idea about it, right? Like, also, what is this doing under the covers, and what is the code? What does that flow look like under the covers? Because, you know, somebody's got to fix it when it breaks, and when the widget or when the agent makes it, you know, how well is it being created?
We can check with Adam and team if they want to just put in a little call Derek. If broken, call Derek.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
All right, let's jump into some hot takes from others. First up is Julie. You have a hot take about Security Copilot.
I just noticed yesterday that they have added Security Copilot, which used to be an additional license that you had to buy. And I've heard from people who are in the sort of security area, IT admin security area, that it is actually pretty good. And so that is now going to be available to Microsoft 365 E5 licenses, not the Office 365 E5s, but the Microsoft 365 E5. So it's going to come with it. And so it'll be interesting to check it out. Most people haven't been able to because it's so freaking expensive. You get a certain amount of usage for under your E5 licensing, and then you have to pay per hour per user. So I think it's like $6 per user per hour to do the security stuff. But if you need it, I mean, it's there. And the fact that you get some amount as part of your E5 makes that a pretty cool update, I think.
You know, the slide before the one that I grabbed here that we're seeing now, it actually was a lead in with an ellipses that says, it was too freaking expensive. So dot.
Yeah. I would not be surprised.
Very self-aware. Yeah.
Very. That was from Dorothy. So Dorothy, she channeled you and then got back on message. All right, so next hot take comes from Derek, agents in Microsoft Teams channels.
Yeah, this one, I wouldn't necessarily call this a hot take for me, more like a lukewarm take. Because I don't know, but I like the idea that we're now able to take the conversational sort of bot experience to the next level and be able to communicate with like our project management tools and use an MCP server to do that. So, you can look here. One of the examples is communicating with like your Asana or Jira board or something like that to get a list of what the different like backlog is so that you can have a discussion inside the channel. So I like that concept from an extensibility perspective. I like it. I mean, it's sort of meh.
It's growth, right? This is incremental.
It is.
Yeah. So if you want to read about it,
to it. Yeah, there wasn't a lot to the announcement. It was just that it's in preview now. And it's limited to these, sort of these tools: Asana, Jira, GitHub, and I think Atlassian.
Yeah.
So.
I will echo it only in the way that when you put it on, that was something you wanted to talk about. I went and found it. If you want to read all the team stuff, it's a big long one as always, but this section is pretty short, and hopefully it is what it is. You just okay, moving on. All right, next hot take coming also from Iceland with Patrick. Patrick, this one doesn't have a graphic. This was just your brain and dump it.
Well, I mean, I think this one I titled "Full AI Ahead" without putting on the legs on the robot, right? Like. Not a great hot take, but it is a hot take nonetheless, which is really, you build the robot. If you don't put the legs on, then it doesn't really get very far. So in this instance, what I'm really thinking about is, as consultants, we've all been building SharePoint and things a certain way over the past 20 years. And the one big thing I feel like is missing is that there's no talk about that. There's no discussion around how Copilot is going to change the way or potentially change the way we work, because it's not going to follow better practices. It doesn't know how to do that. There's no discussion around the amount of human time it takes to get Copilot into the position that it needs to be to work accurately and professionally for us and to pull on those better practices. So it was just one of those things where I feel like, as a project manager, my philosophy is always I'm looking down the train tracks to see if the train's coming. And this feels like the train's getting pretty close and we're about to get hit by it. And we're not going to be able to get out of the way. And there's no way to untie the rope tying us on the tracks because no one's thinking about it.
It is hard to get out of the way without legs on.
I was trying to find a way to make that joke too. Without legs, you can't get out of the way.
But it is also where Teams avatar started and maybe still resides. I haven't checked if avatars have gotten legs yet. Sorry, Mark.
Well, to go with Patrick's train metaphor, it does feel like those of us who have been building IA and sort of doing things a certain way for 20 years and Copilot are on parallel tracks, right? We weren't in any danger. This stuff was just happening. this is happening now. Copilot's starting to look at metadata. It's starting to notice the things that we've been doing all along. But if you haven't been doing that stuff, Copilot's just going to keep heading off faster and faster into the desert with you. It's going to be an interesting journey for a lot of people.
I agree, and I bet if I could see everybody's video, it would be lots of head nodding to what Patrick and Mark were saying. But
Yeah,
to
I'm
get us
gonna
out of,
a-
go ahead, Ju.
I'm going to add to that and just say, I think the other piece here is that the out-of-the-box Copilot orchestration, that's sort of the generalized one that's in all the products, is very poor at doing its job. And that's not to say that every AI implementation is poor. It's to say that that experience that, and I've been talking about this a lot on social media, that initial entry point to Copilot is an extremely poor interaction. And so then add on top of that, if you are doing the things that, you know, Simpraxis advocates for, which is building good information architecture and having good structure and site hygiene and lifecycle management and governance and all of those things, Copilot is sort of going off left, as Mark said, into the desert and not ignoring all that good practice. So you're actually getting a reduced benefit, I guess, for lack of a, I'm struggling for the right word, but you know, not as good of an experience as that you have without Copilot, because Copilot is not recognizing those fundamental pieces of the product.
Now, and then I always wonder, well, what about the people who don't pay for Copilot?
Mm-hmm.
What is their experience in this world going to be? You know, is it just going to be a bunch of buttons that they can't click, or is it, you know, does that 50% that Adam says his team is spending on the core actually getting them better stuff on yet another parallel track where it's, you know, Copilot just isn't there for them yet from a maturity perspective, from a cost perspective. You can listen to all the marketing you want. It's just not something that everybody wants.
Very true. All right, great hot take, Patrick. Thank you, everybody, for jumping in. And we will all push Copilot to do better, especially if it ever takes a train trip with us.
It forgets its legs.
If it gets its legs.
Just wait till
All
it's driving the train.
Yeah, that's probably where people want to go.
As long as they have those guys doing the thing with the hot chocolate, you know, hot, then I'm good. I'm in. Polar Express all the way.
Todd Clint, are you ready for your hot take?
I'm as ready as I'm going to get, Mark Cashman.
All right, first you have to explain the top right graphic and then go for it.
Yeah, so of all the things that I saw, so of course, like everybody, I'm sure, when the book of news came out for Ignite, I did a Control F. I looked for SharePoint, and there was like 3 hits on SharePoint, and it was all, you know, the stuff that we talked about, not much. And then I killed it, and I did a Control F, and I did PowerShell, and there was like 1 hit for PowerShell. There wasn't much in there. So the thing that I got most excited about was when I started reading about Agent 365, and I I need that PowerPoint Copilot agent to get in quick so that my slides don't look like they were made by small children. But I always try to throw a graphic in there, and I thought Agent 86 from the Get Smart series was a good agenty thing to put out there, and it kind of you know, like a tongue in cheek about how all these agents work, how well they work. He's got his shoe phone and all of that. But Agent 365 was something that I thought was kind of interesting for reasons I'll talk about here in a second. But it's one of those nebulous kind of things, like what is Agent 365? And so the way I've been explaining it to folks is it's a marketing term, sort of like Office 365 was, or Microsoft 365 is. It's an umbrella term for a bundle of products and services. So much like Office 365 was, you know, SharePoint and Word and Excel Online and all those kind of things, Agent 365 is a bunch of these other things also. So think of it as a marketing thing. Viva, Ami saying in the chat, exactly. Same kind of stuff. So what I like about it, why I'm excited about it, is because there are 5 different roles that they kind of focus the different pieces of functionality on, and one of them is IT admin. So I read all of those things and got very excited about all the fun IT admin stuff that they're going to be doing. The big thing that's going to let us do is it's going to let us manage our agents a little better. So they're going to show up kind of like users. So they're going to show up in Entra or Entra ID. They're going to have individual IDs we can use. They can have mailboxes that they can send and receive mail from. We can give an agent access to a SharePoint site, a permission like a regular user. And because all the agents are acting like users, we're going to be able to audit them like we can audit user access when an agent sent a message, when an agent's received a message, things like that. There's going to be a new section in admin.microsoft.com for these agents that show up as part of this Agent 365 stuff. So I think from an IT pro perspective, there's a lot of value in things that they're adding. One of the things that I thought was also kind of cool was for the agent developers, there's going to be adding MCP servers, and one of those is going to be a SharePoint MCP server. So Derek talked a few slides ago about using MCP servers to get into services like GitHub and Atlassian and stuff like that. So from the looks of it, this MCP server for SharePoint is going to allow us to create agents and not have to fiddle with all the whole adding different knowledge sources and adding things. We'll be able to just add this MCP server for SharePoint and pull our things in that way. So as somebody who writes agents now and then, I'm really excited that it's going to make it easier for me to interact with SharePoint when I write my agents. Unfortunately, you have to be in the Frontier program to experience any of this fun right now. And then if you've got access to that, there's some places you got to go in and some buttons you got to switch and dials you got to turn and all that. But I'm really looking forward to this when this becomes GA and I can get my fingers on it.
Excellent. I think the Frontier program, if you at least know what it is, at least resonates with the train imagery that we were playing with. So yeah, this is one I feel, me personally, it took me a second to kind of get the what it was, and it really addresses that notion of the agent sprawl that was starting to become the new sprawl of something that then people could be able to get a hold of. But also with the details that you shared, Todd, it seems like it's fairly well thought out, at least that it has access to more than just a couple of types of agents, since there's so many types of agents, that it really does address, at least getting visibility on whatever it is that your company's doing with agents up and down. All right, for sake of time, let's get into some of the things that we didn't hear. These were just quick hits and takes. They may be longer discussions because it is kind of if the 50% of the core they're working on, it's probably where a lot of this falls. But the first two I put in here, one was really just looking at the work a lot that our team does, and I'm learning a lot from Mark Anderson specifically, is just the ability to bring in a lot of the work that you do at the information architecture level into the modern experience. So not necessarily that information architecture is classic, but a lot of it lives within the classic spaces of SharePoint. And the one example that we were looking for, just from the sake of, we knew they weren't going to resolve it at this Ignite, but it was just the notion of, if you have a managed metadata column, that doesn't yet work in the new forms. And so it's that pattern of seeing, gosh, we build a lot of these deeper solutions. You all probably get pulled in to do a lot of the same, or at least want to do it. And not to say that modern is always a blocker, but sometimes it feels like there may not be a pathway to bring forward everything, and not just because it's classic, but because sometimes maybe it's a harder work item for them, or priorities aren't quite there, whatever that might be. But not to hang on that too much, but that was one pattern. The other thing I was just hoping, and I thought that they would have gotten to it by now, is the ability to ground a SharePoint agent on a list. Right now you can ground it on a library, a whole site. Lists are becoming more integrated into Copilot, that is for sure. It doesn't mean that they're ignoring lists, but as an end user, you can't go and just create your simple agent for your site and say, point it at this list of really great information that I want to be a source of truth. All right, sustainability. Who typed that one in?
These next two were both mine. One was just that sustainability, there wasn't really much emphasis on it. I feel like, Microsoft is very transparent in what they're trying to do. I feel like, Kpilot has kind of taken off probably much faster and grown much faster than the 5-year plan they started a few years ago. So just feeling like there should be some addressing of it from one of the larger organizations pushing AI. certainly Microsoft is doing their fair share. They're trying to adapt. I just think mentioning it, particularly with all the push for Copilot, would be good for people to hear. So, we don't all feel like we're just cutting down the rainforest as we're using Copilot to answer our questions. And then the other one is just kind of fleshing out a little bit more on what I was talking about, which was, great that Copilot can now create pages and lists for us. But when it comes to things like writing for the web or setting up our pages or list columns instead of site columns, adding content types, all of these things that we've been doing to help build IA and make sure that the data works well for Copilot. Copilot doesn't do these things. It's like the new templates. They're pretty to look at, but there's nothing under the cover.
Yeah, I would agree a lot with that, and I think the chat is saying the same. My one comment, just hearing you say it out loud, Patrick, is the notion of Copilot being able to reason over and do more for you. That notion, obviously, the promise of it, also leads into, if it doesn't have enough to reason over, it's not reasonable to then expect it to be. And I did try to make my pun, but the point being, it does feel like, gosh, when you do it right, it is pretty good. When it isn't, and you don't know any better, it kind of leaves you to kind of a funny place.
Yeah.
That was great. So we're close to being out of time. I'm sure Julie is yelling at me going, we give this guy the keys and then he goes off the rails. But I would love to at least have a minute of just us closing our mouths. And Ami, I saw you had a bunch of thoughts. If anybody else want to come off mute and just share a take about Ignite, whether it was a big high, a big low, if you were there in person and you did actually get coffee afternoon, go for it. Any hands raised? Any brave souls? All right. Well, I'm going to jump into resources. You can talk over me at any time at this point, or anytime really. But these were some of the highlights of blogs. There were probably 150 blogs published on the 18th in the morning. I scrolled for a little while just to get curiosity. I used to count them specifically. Now I just sort of get the generic number. But these were the important ones as far as the world that we live in with SharePoint, with OneDrive, Teams, Copilot. There were a lot more. But some of the sneaky ones, if you haven't seen the book of news that we've referenced once or twice today, it's a really great thing to scroll and read or search and find. Not only do you find something, but it leads you to the depth content, which is sometimes a little hard to find across different blogs. Most of them are in the tech community, but some are at the parent level of Microsoft. And down below, all the sessions pretty much have now been released on the site. That's where you get the best experience for ASL and some of the accessibility support throughout the event. But it is also in YouTube, which makes it a little bit easier to consume, to follow, to save something, to catch up right where you left off. So they are in YouTube. There's a link in the middle here that takes you to the Microsoft Ignite 2025 playlist. It's done by the Microsoft Events team, and it's just that it's everything. They recorded. It's now in a giant playlist, small interviews to the full sessions. And then last, the Ignite, they didn't announce a specific date, but they did announce that they're going to be back in San Francisco. So they had a little meet and greet with the mayor, Daniel Lurie, and Judson now, spokesperson for all things Microsoft, and they're making it a multi-year commitment. Hard to parse what that fully means, but I think it means if you're interested in going to Ignite next year, make plans for San Francisco probably around this time of year. Ami.
Yeah, one thing in the session of OneDrive, they talked about the possibility that is in private preview. If up until now 300,000 was possible to sync, so they're testing 500,000. Not that it is recommended to sync so many files, but the possibility that it will support is something that for some organizations could be very good. They mentioned that they recommend to do add to shortcut and not the sync, which is also something important. Although many organizations still use the sync of the library, but they don't have an official statement when the sync will be deactivated, but they do recommend to use the sync, but this possibility to sync the support of more than 500 files is a good thing.
Yeah, it's a lot of files. To Todd's love and heart, there is a great PowerShell to be able to turn off sync and move to add to OneDrive. And selfishly, on one of the recent projects, a tiny little win that was unexpected was add to OneDrive. They really like it, and they really are pushing people to use it because it's a benefit for them to be able to get not just their OneDrive files, but their shared files in SharePoint. So thank you, Ami. So to close this out, we have our next episode, December 10th. We're going to be talking about things that are going to be going out of support in 2026. There's not a short list, and there's a great Microsoft Learn resource, but we're going to drill into kind of the what it is and then how to prepare for it, some best practices. We won't have one on December 24th, go figure, but we will be back in the new year. And if you're joining ESPC Dublin, find Patrick and Derek. They're going to be roaming the halls, learning, say hi, take a selfie. And then starting in next year, M365 Miami, we've got Julie, Mark, and myself are going to be there and whooping up a good time in Miami. Hopefully it's a little warmer than in Seattle and in the Boston area. And then in April, we've got the Microsoft 365 Community Conference. Pretty much we're trying to get the whole team there so far. Julie, Mark, Derek, Carrie, and myself. That's April 21st to the 23rd. We do have a new discount code if you're planning to attend and aren't speaking and you need to save a little bit of money. Use Simpraxis. You'll get $150 off. I forgot to put that on here. $150 off registration. And then on the horizon, looking at what's going on in Cologne, Germany. So thank you for your time today. Hopefully Ignite was a bundle of joy and a bundle of something that maybe made you frown here and there. That's the balance of working with Microsoft technologies. Thank you for your time, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Happy Thanksgiving to all of those in the United States and beyond, and have a great weekend coming up.
Thank you so much for joining us this week on Ask Simpraxis. We love getting your questions or session ideas. You can submit by using the link in About. If you find this helpful, hit that like or subscribe button and share this content with your colleagues.